Okay, for our next session of the afternoon, it's organized by the Organization of African Instituted Churches on the topic Amplifying the Voice of Smallholder Farmers in Shaping Adaptation Policy, a faith-based response.
I want to say a good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those of you who are joining us online. And thank you, all of you who are here physically with us. We're so glad to have you. My name is Reverend Phyllis Bird. I will be moderating this session for today. I would like to introduce to you my colleagues that are here with me. The first person I want to introduce is Joshua Kitekule, who is the General Secretary of the Interreligious Council in Uganda. He is a coordinator of the Interreligious Council of all of East Africa. Recently appointed as the East African representative to the AU for Interfaith Platform. I think we should just call him Mr. Interfaith from now on. He is a member, or was a member, of the African Peer Review. So we're so glad to have you here, Joshua.
Thank you, Phyllis, thank you. Thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Next, we have Dr. I'm getting tight-tongued. I don't even know her name well. Timatayo, Dr. Timatayo. She's a teacher at Kano University of Science and Technology in the Kano state of Nigeria. Her area of expertise is linguistics, but she's done a lot of speaking and interacting in the area of women and children and the challenges that take place throughout the continent of Africa as it relates to women and children. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce to you Reverend Nicta Lembale. He's a General Secretary of the Organization of African Instituted Churches. He sits on many boards and commissions in Africa and throughout the world. He is a visionary leader, and it's a pleasure to have him and even work with him. This session, as you've been told, is on adaptation for smallholder farmers, which is absolutely essential. I debated within my head, is the word key or is it essential? I'm not for sure, but they're absolutely essential. Many people in Africa refer to the drum as the talking drum. The sound of the drum has gone throughout the continent of Africa. But it didn't stop there. It cut across the waters and went throughout the whole world. The talking drum summons as well as warns all of us regarding the smallholder farmer who feeds over 75% of Africa. If you can imagine all of you in this room, it's 75% of us that's being fed by smallholder farmers. They are absolutely, positively essential. It is out of their faith commitment. It is out of their conviction of the scriptures that they read, that they pray. Now, many people stop with a full stop when you say pray, but they believe that their prayer leads them to action for justice. It is out of their cultural understanding that was handed down to them through their ancestors, their understanding of being one with creation, the sacred gift of all of the waters, the land, the soil, the livestock. We invite you at this time to listen in to the smallholder farmers as you also listen to the drumbeat that has caused you to be online as well as to be here. Let us listen to the smallholder farmers.
Mimi ningetoa wito kwa muungano wa COP28 ya kwamba mtufidie ile hasara tumepata kutokana na mifugo yetu, kwa sababu tukihama, wakati tunahama, tunaenda kupoteza wanyama wetu kwa njia magonjwa zinaua wanyama wetu, na pia sikifika huko zinaibiwa, wanyama wanaibiwa, tunakosa chakula, tunakosa kulipa watoto wetu karo za shule, na pia tunakosa identity kama Wapokot. Mara nyingi ng'ombe zikiibiwa, wazee wetu wanaenda kupikana, wamama wanabaki wachane, watoto wanabaki bila baba. Mama anahangaika kulisha watoto kwa sababu baba amewawa, ng'ombe zimeibiwa. Njaa jamani, tutafanya namna gani?
Mimi naitwa Julius Meskena, ni mfugaji mdogo katika kaunti ya West Pokot, na tunataka tutoe wito wetu siku ya leo ya kwamba mambo ya climate change imetusumbua sana kama wafugaji, na tunaona ya kwamba imesababisha mambo mengi. Kwa mfano, tumekuwa na mambo ya ukame ambayo imetukumba wakati mwingi sana. Kila mwaka ujao tutakuwa na ukame, na inatupeleka mpaka sisi tutatoka nchi yetu na tuende upande wa Uganda, ambapo pengine utaona ya kwamba tutaenda kukumbana na mambo mengi ambayo ni kama vita, magonjwa, na hiyo inasababisha sisi tuanze kutoka manyumbani kwetu, na itatusumbua sana wakati wote tunapotaka kuendelea. Hatutakuwa na maendeleo yoyote kwa sababu ya kila mwaka tunaondoka tukitafuta nyasi na maji kwa mifugo yetu. Pia mambo ya vita mpakani ya nchi yetu ya Pokot na upande wa Uganda, saa zingine kwa Turkana, sehemu za Turkana na Wapokot pia. Watu wengi wamewawa kwa sababu ya mambo ya mifugo. Na ujue mfugo ndio chakula chetu, mifugo ni masomo, mifugo ni kila kitu ambacho tunategemea kama maisha yetu. Kwa hivyo tuna appeal hii miungano ya COP28 ambao wanafanya mkutano siku hizi, ya kwamba waongeleshe wale nchi za ng'ambo ambayo pengine unaona climate change inatusumbua kwa sababu ya mambo ya industries na mambo mengine ambayo imesababisha hata nchi zote zikawa na ukame, ya kwamba wao watufanyie mambo. Wakati mnafanya huu mkutano, waambiane ukweli ya kwamba
The African drum beat is calling us to a faith commitment for climate justice, for smallholder farmers, indigenous peoples, pastoralist and fishing communities.
My friends, we could not talk about the smallholder farmers without hearing their voice and without hearing their story. Ideally, it would have been wonderful to have all of them from all the areas that we work with be here, but that was physically impossible to do. I'd like to hear from you, Brother Joshua, a little bit about what you do and how you see the work with working with smallholder farmers.
Thank you, Reverend Phyllis, and thank you all of you, and I'm happy to be here. I work with the Intelligence Council of Uganda, but I also have the opportunity of working within the East African countries. I think it's important that we value the voices that we've just heard from the smallholder farmers, and I think what is important is that their voices are really crucial. But how do we then use faith, which is where we are from here, to make sure that we amplify those voices across Uganda, across the continent, to make sure that those voices are heard, and that we use our structures, we use our leadership, the faith and moral leadership that is available to us as faith leaders, to make sure that we amplify those voices. And the spaces that we actually have around the mosque, around the church, but also within the other infrastructure that we have, the schools, the associations of women, of fathers, to make sure that that voice is available. And I think the other point I need to raise is that this whole issue of climate change is been more of a circular issue. I know that as faith leaders, we've been doing some bit of work, but I think we need to do more, especially in terms of mobilizing and organizing the smallholder farmers for adaptation. They are talking about drought. How do we ensure that we use our mosques, our churches, and mobilize them to ensure that they begin to adopt to new technology, to irrigation, so that when the drought comes, they do not have losses, like they've been saying. So I think it's really important that we use our faith and moral leadership to make sure that we are mobilizing and organizing smallholder farmers for mindset. They need to change their mindset so that they begin to quickly adopt to technologies so that then they minimize the losses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joshua. Can you talk a little bit about what is going on with the farmers, some of the losses that they've actually experienced in Uganda?
I know that when the floods come, the floods wipe away the gardens or the farms, and that's really terrible. So one of the things, for example, that we are doing in my own country is how do we prepare farmers, and we have come up with a demonstration farm where we invite smallholder farmers. Unfortunately, I don't have the pictures here to show you the kind of work that we're doing at that farm to build skills, to build competences, but also to make sure that they become resilient, they prepare for they become resilient, so that when the floods come, they're already prepared and they don't incur all the losses that I'm actually talking about. So that's the part of the work that we're actually doing, but also technology, that when the floods come, they are able to collect water, store that water. And when the drought season comes, then they're able to use that water they have been storing for irrigation. And we've been doing a lot of that work at our demonstration farm. But we think that this needs to be now expanded so that we're able to do this not just in Uganda, but across East Africa, but also across Africa. So I think we can actually do more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Timoteo, could you talk a little bit about what is going on with women and children across the continent as it relates to climate?
Thank you very much, Dr. Phyllis. The issue of climate change as it affects women, the impact on women and children, it's a global thing. I want to look at it from the perspective of when they have cultivated, gone toiling day and night to nurture those crops and plants. And all of a sudden, drought comes in some areas. And when drought comes, it means crops will fail. Everything will fail. They are devastated psychologically. And they have to source for means to ensure that they redeem the situation. In doing this, they have to go extra mile. Sometimes, for example, from the northern part of Nigeria, where they have to do some fetching of water, except for now that they are able to get some help, where people get pumping machine for them to pump water for irrigation on this farming. In the south, flood comes, wipes away, displaces these women, and even children. When it displaces them, they go to IDP camps. These children no longer goes to school. They are just there, having hope that someday something better or good will come. Even as we speak, in the north, they have problem of epidemic where it will wipe away, and some Fulani herdsmen too could steal their cattle. And when these are done, there is shortfall. There's nothing to redeem their situation. And narratives that are even used for these women are not in accordance with their knowledge. They don't look at the contextual situations when policies are being made, to look at the kind of language, the kind of narratives that we're going to use that will conform, that will suit their peculiar situation and how to address it, how to train them to know what to do when things of such happens. And for the children, they are displaced. They are homeless. And that's why you see so much of Almajiris. They are there, they don't have any source of going to school, no hope of people looking at their situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some months ago, when I was in Malawi, and I was at a meeting on adaptation, we went to another side of Malawi where there was Hurricane Freddie and people who were devastated by Hurricane Freddie. And we saw that those who were devastated the most and displaced were women and children, and they were living in schools, so which meant schools had to close down. So when there is a flood or a drought, excessive rain, mudslides, that means everything is destroyed. It is not just saying, okay, the floods came and the farmers lost life, but also the situation affected, the whole village. The situation also affected the kids going to school, children going to school, because schools had to close so that the people could move into schools. So therefore, it was a trickle-down effect where so many other people were experienced the problems. But Doctor, could you please tell us also a little bit about the language that we use? When we talk about the language in climate change, does the farmers really understand what we're talking about?
Well, the issue of narratives or the kind of registered words that are supposed to be used for people in these peculiar situations are not used. They don't look at the context. They just decide to take language policies that they cannot even comprehend. They won't understand that when they bring these machines or some other equipment for them to use, there is no kind of language that will go to their level to explain to them that though it takes much of skills, but there are situations that you still need to communicate, to talk to them, to ensure that they understand, they comprehend what they need to do when they are supposed to do it, so that the disproportionate will not be there. If they don't understand the context with which they are supposed to use a particular language for a set of people, especially women, telling them that you don't have to go like 2-3 kilometers away. We have come with a pumping machine, but this is how you are going to use it. If we don't communicate to them, they won't be able to know that they don't have to go miles to fetch water to come back, but that there's a machine that can be used. For example, where flood has taken place and there are some crops that are redeemed, if they are able to get dryers for them, they must be able to ensure that they explain in the language that they will understand, to be able to use these dryers to redeem those items, those crops, so that they don't perish. That the things that they will begin to look for sun in days, that it can be done in number of hours, and they would have redeemed those crops.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
There's a bishop in Kenya called Bishop Koskei, and there was a funeral in the community, and the bishop stood up and said, many people here that's attending this funeral believe that the person who who passed away, died because the community is cursed. The community is cursed because so many people are dying of cancer, he said, according to the narrative that's in the community. But he said in actuality, the people are not cursed. He said, remember, and he gave the date, and I don't remember the date, we bought this fertilizer to kill our weeds. And he said the fertilizer got into the soil, and the cows ate the grass, and the grass, we drank the milk as well as had the meat of the cow. And because of that, and since that period of time, the people had cancer and began to die. He explained what was going on in very simple words that the people understood. And it was an aha moment for the people to say, we must do something. We must do something. You heard the whispers throughout the funeral, and which was a very unusual thing to take place in a funeral, saying, we must do something. So what does that mean? That means the language that we're using here becomes almost like an echo chamber. We know it, we say it all the time, and we use acronyms. But in actuality, the people that we deal with don't understand it. So it's being able to explain to the farmers and the people in the community and the mamas and the children what we're doing and what we're saying in a language that they understand. Reverend Nicta, could you talk a little bit about how small-scale farmers and what's going on?
Thank you so much. You'll bear with me with a bit of irritation, a little cough, but I'll go ahead. Good to see you all here who are in the room and those who are online. You know, many times when we talk about smallholder farmers, it may seem as if we are talking about micro farmers, talking about maybe people who do not have a major contribution to what we are doing. But it's already mentioned people who produce 75 to 80%, and in some countries, about 90% of the food produced in Africa. The sector employs, by 2021, 52% of all the people employed in Africa. It is a sector which has put children in school. It is a sector which is contributing to agri-processing. Then it is a sector which is where people are involved with ecological resources, so which means smallholder farmers are key actors in processes for ecological renewal. So that's why they are so important to us. But the biggest challenge is that despite their importance, despite their contribution to Africa's food security and development, they are not so close. In fact, they are distant to policy formulation and implementation. Our professor has talked about the language that has been used. You talk about adaptive capacity. You talk about maybe you talk about adaptation. We talk about mitigation. It doesn't mean that they don't know these things, but sometimes the policies are far from the normal day-to-day narrative, so we need to turn that around. So a lot of things have been said here. Mr. Chitakule, a professor, we are talking about adaptation. If you look at adaptation strategies for fishing communities, what are they? If you look at adaptation strategies for smallholder farmers among indigenous communities, what are they? If you look at adaptation capacities or capabilities for people, for farmers in the south to south in Nigeria, a state like Akwa Ibom receives rain 79% of the days in the year, about 291 days. Now, climate change changes that they receive rain even when they are supposed to dry their crops. What are adaptive capacities of people in such an area? What are adaptive capacities for the farmers, for the herdsmen, for the cattle keepers in Pokot, who are losing their cattle and now they have to start to grow grass and keep it and feed their livestock? What are adaptive capacities for women who are losing their crop? And you have to talk about solar dryers. In dry places, you have to talk about irrigation technology or equipment. What does that mean in terms of resources? Here is the biggest challenge for smallholder farmers. They rely on what is termed as autonomous adaptation, which means a personal or family initiatives, and if they are stretched a little more, they are simply community initiatives which rely on the social capital or the network of the networks of the farmers. We need to go towards planned adaptation, which deals with agricultural systems. It deals with the soils, it deals with the water, it deals with post-harvest handling, it deals with marketing, it deals with the processing and the preservation. It is a whole range of responses that deals with the systems rather than day-to-day responses to weather. I think that's where it is. That's where the direction is. How do we handle agricultural systems where smallholder farmers are key stakeholders so that they can adapt and remain productive, or even their productivity goes up in the face of climate change?
Reverend Nictor, before I invite the audience for questions, can you talk a little bit about what the OAIC is doing, the Organization of African Instituted Churches, as well as if I can hear from Brother Joshua to talk about the trainings that took place with the OAIC, and how do you see that? How has the farmers benefited from that, as well as church leaders? So maybe we should start with Joshua, then we go to Reverend Nictor again.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to see my minister here for energy, Honorable Lieutenant Kabira. Welcome. I think one of the key things that our government has been able to do is the parish development model, where most of the things that Reverend Nictor is actually talking about are part of the parish development model. So one of the things that we have to do as faith community is how do we work with the government to ensure that we create more awareness of what is available in their communities, through our churches, through our mosques, through these other associations. The other thing that I talked about that I need to emphasize here is the mindset. Many times, even when some of these things are actually available, our people are not aware. Or because of culture, they don't adapt quickly or easily. That's why it's crucial that the faith leadership is important in making sure that we do mass mobilization, we do sensitization to ensure that the language that professors actually talk about becomes simple and easy for small stakeholder farmers to understand and to adopt. So I think that's what we need to do more through our churches, through our mosques, but also to do more advocacy with government so that most of these things, how do you organize markets? How do you ensure that the hand dryers that Reverend Nictor is talking about are actually available? And if they're available, how cheap are they? Where is the financing? Where is the money? Because largely, this group of people are actually poor people. So they need to be supported financially. And I said for Uganda, we're actually happy that the government has introduced the parish development model, which actually helps with finances so that then they're able to procure some of the important equipment that they need for irrigation, but also for drying their crops. So I think that's where we need to do more. And as the Interreligious Council of Uganda, I mentioned that through our programs, we are able to sensitize communities through the churches, through the mosques. We are able to bring some of the farmers at our demonstrations farm in Buikwe, which is actually a farm that we have established at national level, where we bring farmers to learn, teach them how to adapt to modern agriculture. And we think we are doing well. What we need to do more, as I said, is we now need to make sure that every district, every parish, there is an action that is actually taking place. Thank you very much.
I want to just go back to you, Brother Joshua. Excuse me for picking on you, but unless Uganda is extremely extraordinarily different from Kenya, I'm a church leader in Kenya, and I don't see any of what happens, whether it be a COP meeting or another AU meeting, filtering down to the church leaders to filter down to the people. Now, if you're telling me that Uganda is extraordinary and this happens all easily, then I would say praise God for Uganda.
What we've been able to do is that we build structures from a national level to regional level, sub-regional level, to district level. And because of this new model, we are building platforms at parish level. And those platforms are able to mobilize and organize, first, the faith community, and then the communities to make sure that they embrace the government programs that are available in those parishes. So it's happening.
Okay, so that means that when I go to Uganda, I think it's in January, February, any church leader on the ground, I can ask about the COP28, and they will be able to articulate what took place.
Language. I talked about language.
Okay.
They will not understand COP28. But
In their language.
simplify the key issues that COP28 is actually talking about. Then they will be able to do those things. So I think we have a problem of language. You will not expect a villager in my community to understand what COP28 is all about. But they will know that actually the climate is affecting them.
Okay.
They will see the floods, they will see the drought, they will see the seasons change.
Yes.
And that's what you need to explain in their language. Then they'll be able to understand.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Reverend Nictor, talk a little bit about what the OAIC is doing as a whole.
I think two things that OAIC is doing, but also that faith communities we promote. Number one, transform practice. The farming practices, farming that is linked to ecological renewal, but also farming where smallholder farmers have access to resilient seeds for resilient crops, establishing seed banks. That means we promote replantable seeds, establishing demonstration farms together with the public extension workers, government extension workers. That is the whole issue of practice itself. We have a role. If we are collecting money from people, we have to invest money in adaptation as churches and faith communities. That is number one. Number two, we need to accompany the farmers in amplifying their voice for responsive public institutions. Africa needs to re-engineer the agriculture extension system. In my village, I was talking to the agriculture extension officer. Certainly, my expertise is in faith, in development, especially in the area of social development and sustainable livelihoods. But I had to explain to extension officer what adaptation is. So we have to re-engineer the agriculture extension systems, and their public policy and institutions have to be responsive at the subnational level in local governments, at the national level, and then at the international level, those who are responsible for wanton destruction through unsustainable consumption and production have to pay for that. The governments do not have enough resources in Africa to pay for that. Expand extension systems, expand access to irrigation equipment, access to post-harvest handling equipment, expand access, especially by women farmers, to have more access to productive resources. That links to international policy. So, what are we doing as the OAIC together, other faith communities, the Intelligence Council, to say those responsible for destruction have to pay so that the farmers have the resources? I think two things: transforming practice, transforming policy formulation and implementation so that it's responsive to the farmers. Thank you.
If I was in a church on Sunday morning, I'd say, let the church say amen. Thank you. I would like to open up this time for the audience. If you have any questions, please, we don't have much time. I'd invite you to raise a question.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
I was attracted to come because of the topic, because I'd been doing some work on amplifying the voices of climate frontline communities in Nigeria. And we went around 17 states and about 57 communities. Now, one of the things that stands out is that in reaching to some of those communities, we had to go through their faith centers, churches, and mosques. And of course, that tells me that there is a whole lot that the faith community can help to achieve, especially with small-scale farmers. And I'm happy that you mentioned about extension services. It's part of the bane of agriculture production in Africa. It's obvious that the government cannot muscle the resources to employ as many as possible. But the faith centers usually have the opportunity of doing community-led extension services. Yeah, because most often you find somebody who is relatively informed, who can digest some of the semi-technical, not the technical like Prof was mentioning. The languages need to be clear to them. Otherwise, they are going to misinform the community. So there's a whole lot of opportunity. And also, the fact that the faith community has this moral power that is yet to be properly deployed, especially at the national and subnational levels. So we would expect a lot more from body of faith organizations in terms of helping to advance the voices of small-scale farmers, especially around policies. So I see a lot of opportunity. I want to congratulate you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. My name is Hajat Sebiar. I'm from Uganda. I just want to, you did mention that the smallholder farmers are actually affected, and if those ones who are polluting are able to pay loss and damage, these will be paid. As they have to pay. Okay. My question, to the faith, is how will you ensure that in the event they have paid, that what is paid actually trickles down to the ones who need it, or to the ones who are most affected? I thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is Ruth Nankabirwa. I'm the Minister of Energy and Mineral Development from Uganda. But I was also nominated by the House of Bishops of Church of Uganda to be the spokesperson for church in the Cabinet of Uganda, the first of its kind. So I stand here, first of all, to appreciate, although I came in late, but the fact that you're seated here and you are discussing a very important issue of how smallholders can adapt to the climate change requirements. And I want to thank you so much. I just want to give information on top of what Brother Chita Akule has given you, that the government of Uganda is in partnership with religious institutions. Whether it is an epidemic, COVID-19, Ebola, or whatever, we call upon religious institutions to give the message to the people who bring themselves before you without allowances, without transportation, every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday, even in the middle of the week, there are gatherings that are praising the Lord. So as government of Uganda, we thought it was important that we partner with religious institutions. We include them in programs. We deliver tractors to religious institutions, tractors, because we want to mechanize agriculture. We want to increase production and productivity. So the parish development model that he talked about will require electrification. So I'm standing here to announce that the energy transition plan for Uganda, which I launched 4 days ago, takes care of this because we want to see value addition to what the farmers produce. And we also want to see post-harvest handling being handled. We can't afford losing 40% of our maize through post-harvest handling. So electricity is very critical, and we partner with religious council, interreligious council, to take the message so that we deal with issues of energy efficiency and conservation. Otherwise, I appreciate, and I'm standing here to offer my support whatsoever. Let us break down the information so that it is understood by a lay person down there in order to be able to utilize their small land holdings for maximum benefits. Thank you and praise the Lord.
First of all, I'd like to thank our speakers. Because of time, we will not be able to give them one word, one message, starting with Reverend Victor.
I think as we end, this is what we bring COP. Thank you, Honorable Minister, we are here. You are here. Here is the message. Climate change is negatively impacting. It's a policy message. Climate change is negatively impacting the productivity of smallholder agriculture, hence undermining Africa's ability to end hunger. For long, smallholder farmers are being excluded in policy formulation processes or reduced to recipients of actions of sympathy by even the destroyers. As faith communities, we stand with the smallholder farmers in their search for a just policy framework that caters for their realities. The policy framework in response to climate change that we are calling for places smallholder farmers at the center of adaptation and mitigation efforts as key stakeholders in the agriculture sector. 5 key policy, not requests, but proposals and demands. Our voice with the smallholder farmers in COP28 is as following. Number 1, recognize the smallholder farmers as key stakeholders in the agriculture sector. Number 2, promote adaptation solutions that are linked to ecological renewal and lead to food sovereignty. Number 3, expand access to productive resources for women smallholder farmers. Number 4, climate financing should be grants, not loans. Number 5, just and accessible financing frameworks that cater for adaptation, mitigation realities of smallholder farmers, pastoralists, indigenous people, and fishing communities. Number 6, reprioritize investment in public institutions for effective service delivery with focus on agricultural systems and social protection. Thank you very much.
Thank you.